Hello, friends. Today we uncover a frightening tale of unseen terror that can invade even the most secure spaces. Alex's life was once mundane, until whispers of an intruder shattered their peace of mind. With each small sign ignored, fear took root, turning their sanctuary into a prison. You will remember this. Alex stood at the threshold of their apartment, a momentary pause that felt like the calm before an unrelenting storm. The door creaked slightly, a sound that had once seemed mundane, but now echoed ominously in the silence. They took a deep breath, scanning the hallway, half expecting to see a shadow lurking just beyond the periphery. The stillness was deceptive. It wrapped around them like a thick fog, concealing the reality that had begun to seep into their life. It started with small things, a misplaced key, the faint scent of cologne that lingered in the air when no one had been there. Alex brushed it off initially, convincing themselves that it was just a figment of an overactive imagination. But the feeling of being watched crept deeper, insidiously entwining itself with their thoughts. They locked the door with a firm click, as if sealing away not just the entrance to their home, but the growing sense of dread that had taken residence in their mind. As days turned into weeks, the signs became harder to ignore. The footsteps that echoed down the hall when Alex returned from work seemed just a beat too familiar. The rustle of a newspaper under someone else's hand as they passed the cafe where Alex always sat, alone in the corner. It was as if a ghost were mimicking their every move, taunting them with an unseen presence that made the walls feel like they were closing in. Every night, Alex double-checked the locks, fingers trembling as they turned the key. The action no longer felt like a precaution, but a ritual, a desperate attempt to maintain the fragile illusion of safety. They could feel the weight of that expectation pressing down. The irony that the very act meant to protect them also served as a reminder of their vulnerability. The broken locks that adorned every door in their mind became a cruel metaphor for the boundaries they felt slipping away. One by one, a sense of panic began to rise, bubbling beneath their skin, igniting the urge to scream, to run, yet leaving them paralyzed. The whispers of self-doubt echoed louder than the rustling leaves outside their window. Were they imagining it all? Had they somehow invited this invasion into their life by failing to notice the signs? The question hung heavy in the air, unanswerable and suffocating. Alex found themselves retreating into their own solitude, shrinking from the world outside. Friends began to fade, phone calls went unanswered, and laughter felt like a distant memory. The isolation was a double-edged sword, both a refuge and a cage. And with each passing day, the urge to confide in someone, anyone, felt more daunting. The fear of being dismissed, of being told they were overreacting, loomed larger than the shadows that began to stretch across their home. In the quiet moments of the night, they would sit in the half-darkness of their living room, the light from the street lamp casting long shadows that danced mockingly on the walls. It was a claustrophobic place, filled with the remnants of a life that once felt secure. The cracked mirror hanging on the wall reflected not just their image, but the fractured pieces of their identity, distorted by the fear that had taken root. As the silence droned on, the weight of uncertainty pressed against their chest, tightening like a vice. The world outside continued to move, oblivious to the unraveling that was happening just beyond the door. But Alex knew that soon, very soon, they would have to confront the reality of what lay hidden in the shadows. The question lingered, an uninvited guest. How do you recognize an invisible threat before it dismantles your very sense of self? The light in Alex's apartment flickered, casting jagged shadows across the walls. Each time it dimmed, a pulse of anxiety surged through them, a reminder of the lurking fear that had begun to seep into every corner of their life. They sat on the edge of the bed, fingers trembling against the fabric of the comforter, heart racing with the weight of unrecognizable dread. It was the silence that was the loudest, a suffocating blanket that wrapped around them, squeezing tighter with every passing moment. Outside, the city hummed with life. But inside, Alex felt like a ghost, haunting their own existence. The walls seemed to close in, whispering doubts and fears, mirroring the fractured reflections of their psyche. They caught a glimpse of themselves in the cracked mirror hanging by the door. A distorted figure, eyes wide with terror, skin pale and drawn. The crack ran jaggedly through the glass, splitting their reflection into disjointed halves, much like the pieces of their own mind that were beginning to fracture under the relentless strain of unseen torment. A knock echoed through the apartment, sharp and jarring. Alex flinched, every nerve on high alert. It was as if the walls themselves had betrayed them, allowing the world outside to intrude. They wanted to rise, to answer the door, to reach out for help. But a heavy weight pressed down on their chest, anchoring them in place. What if it was him? The thought slashed through their mind, cold and unyielding, sending shivers down their spine. The very idea of confrontation, of exposing their vulnerability, seemed insurmountable. With each passing day, the psychological pressure morphed into a paralyzing fear. It gnawed at the edges of their sanity. Memories of quiet evenings spent with friends morphed into visions of strangers lurking in the dark, eyes watching, waiting. Alex could feel the walls of their mind closing in, a relentless squeeze that left them gasping for air. The emotional turmoil bubbled just below the surface, teetering on the brink of explosion. They pressed their palms against their eyes, willing the tears to stay at bay. Deep breaths, they reminded themselves. But how could they breathe when the very act of living felt like a betrayal to their own safety? The cracks in the mirrors seemed to widen, echoing the fractures in their heart, the fissures in their resolve. Despair crept closer, a dark shadow with an insatiable hunger for their hope. What was left of their identity? The question lingered in the air, heavy and oppressive, as if the universe itself was waiting for an answer. They felt so far from the person they once were, a vibrant soul, full of laughter and light. Now they were reduced to a figure cloaked in fear, a puppet tangled in strings pulled by an unseen hand. The knock came again, louder this time, insistent. Alex's breath hitched, their heart pounding in tandem with the sound. They wanted to scream, to unleash the tidal wave of emotion that had been building within them. But the fear held them captive. Would it even matter? Would anyone truly understand the torment they faced? In that moment, Alex felt the weight of the world crashing down, suffocating yet liberating. Maybe, just maybe, it was time to shatter the silence that had held them hostage for too long. But how? How does one confront an internal shattering when fear itself feels like an insurmountable barrier? The mirror reflected their turmoil back at them, a haunting echo of the strife within. It was a reminder that the deepest battles are often fought not in the flesh, but in the fragile spaces of the mind. And as Alex sat there, a silent scream hanging in the air, the question loomed larger than life. How to mend the pieces of a shattered self? The room felt stifling, each breath weighed down by an unseen heaviness that crept under Alex's skin. Soft light filtered through the window, illuminating the stark contrast of the broken locks on the door, a symbol of privacy shattered. Dr. Evelyn Hayes sat across from Alex, her presence a steadying force amidst the chaos swirling in Alex's mind. Stalking is not just a physical act. Dr. Hayes began, her voice calm yet piercing through the haze of Alex's confusion. It's a psychological invasion. The stalker uses manipulation, creating an environment where the victim feels constantly surveilled, even when they're alone. Could understanding be the key to unraveling the grip of fear? Every time you doubt yourself, every time you hesitate to reach out for help, that's what they want. The stalker's power depends on your silence. You must challenge that narrative. Dr. Hayes's voice rose slightly, imbued with an urgency that ignited something deep within Alex. The tension in the room shifted. It was as if the air itself crackled with potential. Alex felt the weight of despair lifting, replaced by a fierce longing for clarity. They were beginning to see the intricate dance of manipulation, the way fear had woven itself into the very fabric of their identity. Am I supposed to confront them? The question hung in the air, heavy yet hopeful. Not directly, but you must confront the fear they've instilled in you. Knowledge is your ally, Dr. Hayes replied, her tone steadying. Understanding the tactics of emotional terror is the first step toward reclaiming your agency. A spark flickered in Alex's heart, an ember of courage igniting amidst the ashes of their shattered sense of self. It was terrifying, yet exhilarating. The idea of not just surviving, but fighting back. The thought of breaking free from the shackles of silence felt intoxicating. As Dr. Hayes continued to explain the psychological mechanisms at play, Alex felt the broken locks on their door transform from a symbol of defeat to one of potential liberation. Each tactic described was a piece of the puzzle, revealing the contours of the invisible threat that had loomed over them for far too long. But as the session drew to a close, the question remained, lingering like a specter in the air. How could knowledge about manipulation and emotional terror pave the way for confronting the unseen dangers that had haunted them? The realization struck Alex with newfound clarity. They were not just a victim. They were on the cusp of awakening, poised to reclaim their narrative. The small, sterile office felt like a cage to Alex. White walls closed in around him, suffocating the remnants of his previous life. Detective Mark Reynolds sat across the polished desk, his presence a steady anchor amidst Alex's swirling thoughts. The faint hum of the overhead light buzzed like a warning siren, and every tick of the clock echoed the urgency of their conversation. "Here's the thing, Alex," Mark began, his voice calm but firm. "Stalking laws can be complicated. You have rights, but navigating this system isn't straightforward. It's designed to protect, but it often feels like a labyrinth." He shuffled through a stack of papers, his brow furrowing as he searched for clarity amidst the legal jargon. Alex felt a wave of despair wash over him. The detective's words were like a dual-edged sword, promising hope but also revealing the daunting reality. The intricacies of legal action loomed large, a sprawling network he felt ill-equipped to traverse. What if I can't figure this out? The thought spiraled through his mind, a dark echo of his inner fear. Mark continued, detailing the steps required to file a restraining order, each term a reminder of the invasive presence haunting Alex's life. You'll need to document every instance, every text, every shadow you feel lingering behind you. It's tedious, but it's crucial. Evidence is your armor. Alex stared blankly at the detective, his heart racing. Armor? It felt so far from what he had. Each day he felt more like a prisoner in his own skin, the shadows creeping closer, invading his thoughts and his sanity. The idea of confronting the stalker, or even just the legal system, sent tremors through his gut. "Look." Mark leaned forward, meeting Alex's gaze with an intensity that cut through the fog of his spiraling thoughts. "I know it's overwhelming, But reclaiming your safety starts with understanding your options. Knowledge is power, Alex. The detective's voice softened, empathy creeping into his tone. You're not alone in this. For the first time, Alex felt a flicker of something other than fear, the faintest ember of hope igniting within him. Could it be possible? The notion of taking control, however tentative, sparked a deep yearning inside. Mark's presence was a stark contrast to the pervasive isolation that had clutched at Alex's heart. A reminder that there was a path forward if he was willing to fight for it. A sudden sound crackled outside the office, a closing door echoing through the stillness. Alex's breath hitched. The paranoia gripped him tightly. The broken locks of his life felt heavier at that moment. A tangible reminder of the boundaries shattered by the unseen stalker. Alex? Mark's voice broke through his spiraling thoughts. We'll take this step by step. You'll have support. There was conviction in his words, a promise that resonated. But the question hung unspoken between them, heavy and immovable. How could he truly overcome the complexities of the legal system while grappling with the terror that lurked just beyond the threshold of his mind? As the weight of uncertainty loomed, Alex felt a surge of defiance rise within him. The journey ahead would be fraught with challenges, illuminated only by the fragile hope that perhaps, just perhaps, he could reclaim his identity from the shadows. The dim light of the living room flickered as Alex sat curled on the edge of the couch, the shadows creeping closer, wrapping around them like an unwelcome embrace. Outside, the world bustled with the sounds of life. Laughter, chatter, distant music. But inside, a heavy silence pressed against their ears, amplifying the chaos within. Here, in this sanctuary turned prison, the walls felt like they were closing in, and Alex could almost hear the whispers of their own doubts swirling in the air. Just days ago, after meeting Detective Reynolds, there had been a spark of determination, a glimmer of hope that had felt almost tangible. But now, that light seemed to fade, dimmed by the weight of fear and isolation. Alex's mind raced with questions, each one more debilitating than the last. What if speaking out only made things worse? What if the stalker was closer than they realized? The possibility of being exposed, of being vulnerable, twisted their stomach into knots. The flickering light overhead mirrored Alex's internal struggle, dancing between the shadows and the faint glow of hope. They wrapped their arms around their knees, feeling small, insignificant. Each passing day, the stalker's presence loomed larger, a ghostly figure that haunted their thoughts and robbed them of peace. Alex could picture them lurking just outside, waiting for the moment when they would slip, the moment when silence would seal their fate. Just stay quiet, they whispered to themselves, the words tasting bitter on their tongue. But silence was a double-edged sword. It shielded them, yes, but it also locked them away in an echo chamber of isolation. The call from a friend last week had gone unanswered, a choice made in fear. When had it become easier to retreat into the shadows than to reach out for help? The answer was as dark as the room around them. The phone buzzed on the table, a lifeline, a reminder of connection. But Alex's hand hesitated over it. What could they say? I'm being watched? The thought felt ludicrous, even to themselves. They imagined the reactions. Disbelief, pity, perhaps even fear from those who cared. It was easier to hide, easier to drift further away into the solitude that had become both a refuge and a prison. As the fading light cast elongated shadows across the room, Alex felt the weight of their fractured self-image bearing down. The cracked mirror hanging on the wall reflected a version of themselves they barely recognized. a stranger lost in the fog of anxiety and despair. The person staring back seemed diminished, each crack a testament to the emotional toll taken by relentless psychological terror. In that moment, the question lingered in the air, unspoken yet palpable. How could they ever break free from this cycle of fear when every thought pulled them deeper into isolation? The urgency to confront the stalker battled against the paralyzing grip of doubt, a tug of war in a mind that felt increasingly alien. They could almost hear the echo of their own heartbeat, each thump reminding them of the life still pulsing within, yet so distant from the vibrant connections they once enjoyed. The tension in the room thickened, a suffocating blanket that wrapped around Alex, squeezing tight until they felt as though they might shatter. Just then, a flicker of resolve began to spark in the depths of their mind. The realization that perhaps, just perhaps, the act of reaching out could light a path through the darkness. But as quickly as it ignited, the flame faltered under the weight of fear, leaving only the silence and the shadows, whispering doubts, and an unyielding sense of detachment. And in that moment of stillness, Alex was left wondering. Would they ever find the courage to step into the light, to confront the lurking danger that threatened to consume them? Or would they remain trapped in this fading glow, an unwilling prisoner to the unseen forces that sought to erase them? The dimly lit office was a sanctuary of knowledge, every corner filled with books that whispered of psychological warfare and human vulnerability. Alex sat across from Dr. Hayes, their fingers nervously tracing the rim of a coffee cup, a cracked mirror reflecting their unease. The steady hum of the fluorescent lights above seemed to amplify the silence, intensifying the gravity of the moment. Stalkers often employ subtle tactics, Dr. Hayes began, her voice a calm anchor amidst the chaos in Alex's mind. They exploit vulnerabilities, planting seeds of doubt in your perception of reality. It's not always a direct threat. Sometimes, it's the insidious nature of uncertainty that eats away at your sense of self. Alex's heart raced as the words settled in, the weight of her statement sinking in. Memories flooded back, the feeling of being watched, the shadows that loomed larger than life. Each incident replayed like a haunting film, the scenes distorted and marred by fear. Was it paranoia? Or was there truly a predator lurking in the periphery? You see, they want you to doubt your own thoughts. It's a psychological game, Dr. Hayes continued, her eyes locking onto Alex's, unwavering and clear. They manipulate situations to isolate you, making you question not just your safety, but your very identity. When you start to believe you're the problem, that's when they've won. As the pieces of the puzzle began to fit together, Alex felt a surge of mixed emotions, shock, clarity, and something else, a flicker of determination. The reflection in the cracked mirror of their mind was not one of a powerless victim, but of someone slowly waking up to the reality of their situation. A path forward, though fraught with challenges, began to form in the fog of their anxiety. But how do I fight back? Alex asked, their voice barely a whisper, drenched in vulnerability. The question hung in the air, thick with the weight of uncertainty and fear. Dr. Hayes leaned forward, her hands clasped together, a look of empathy crossing her features. Understanding their tactics is the first step. Knowledge is power. It transforms fear into a tool for action. You can't remain silent. Silence only empowers them. The notion resonated deeply within Alex, echoing through the chambers of their mind. Silencing the whispers of the stalker meant exposing the tactics that had kept them shackled in a cage of fear. But the idea of confrontation sent shivers down their spine. Would acknowledging the threat truly reclaim their life? Or would it deepen the scars? Every moment you remain in silence, they tighten their grip. Dr. Hayes pressed on, her tone firm yet compassionate. It's time to break that hold. You must define your narrative, not them. Alex's breath caught as the realization crystallized. The fear of exposure had kept them paralyzed. But perhaps it was the very acknowledgement of that fear that could start to shatter the hold it had on them. The cracked mirror of their self-image began to reflect a version of themselves that was ready to reclaim agency, to confront the shadows that had dictated their life for too long. Yet, the question lingered, a haunting refrain. How could they possibly find the courage to face the invisible threat that had woven itself so tightly into the fabric of their daily existence? The answer, elusive and daunting, danced just beyond reach, leaving Alex suspended in a moment of transformative tension. The air felt thick around Alex as they stood at the threshold of their apartment, the dim light casting long shadows across the floor. The walls, once a sanctuary, now felt like a prison, echoing the whispers of doubt that had taken root in their mind. They hesitated, fingers grazing the cool metal of the doorknob, caught in the grip of a paralyzing fear that whispered insidiously, urging them to retreat into the shadows. Outside, life hummed along in a chaotic symphony. Cars honked, voices rose in laughter, and footsteps pattered against the pavement. It was a world that felt both familiar and terrifyingly distant. Alex's heart raced, the beat a frantic reminder of the isolation that clawed at their insides. The stalker's presence loomed large in their mind, a ghostly figure that had invaded every corner of their existence, twisting it into something foreign and unrecognizable. Every time I step outside, will I be watched? Will I be followed? The question spiraled, tightening the vice of anxiety around their chest. Silence had wrapped itself around them like a shroud. But Alex knew deep down that this silence was a double-edged sword, a false shield that only served to empower the unseen tormentor. With every unspoken word, every missed opportunity to confront the fear, they could feel the stalker's grip tightening, squeezing the very essence of who they were. Taking a deep breath, Alex stepped back into the apartment, the familiar scent of their home mingling with the stale air of uncertainty. They could feel the walls closing in, the shadows lengthening, and in that moment, a flicker of resolve ignited deep within. "No more," they whispered, the words tasting foreign yet liberating on their tongue. It was a vow, a declaration of war against the fear that had held them captive for too long. The kitchen, once vibrant with the clinking of dishes and the scent of spices, now felt barren, an empty canvas waiting for color. Alex recalled the image of open doors, a symbol of courage and new beginnings. What would it take to step through that door, to venture into the world beyond the confines of their fear? The thought sent a shiver down their spine. Yet it also stirred something stirring within, an ember of determination that mustered strength from the depths of despair. Choosing to stay silent is a choice to let them win, they thought, the realization washing over them like a wave. Each moment of avoidance was a moment given up, a piece of their identity surrendered to the shadows. But to confront the fear, to speak out, to seek help, was to reclaim their narrative, to redefine the boundaries that had been so cruelly violated. With a newfound sense of purpose, Alex approached the door again, this time pausing to consider the world outside. The bustling street, the vibrant life beyond the threshold, each heartbeat echoed with the promise of connection, of support, of strength. What if they could find allies? What if, by reaching out, they could turn the tide? The question hung in the air, taut and unresolved. How could one make that decisive step toward a brighter future while still shackled by the weight of fear? It was a daunting prospect, yet the thought of remaining a prisoner in their own life was far more terrifying. As they grasped the doorknob with trembling fingers, Alex could feel the warmth of resolve coursing through them, a gentle but insistent push toward action. They were not merely stepping outside. They were stepping into a new chapter of their life, one where they would no longer be defined by the shadows that stalked them. With a deep breath, they turned the knob, the door creaking open to a world filled with uncertainty, but also possibility. A world where they could reclaim their voice. And as they crossed the threshold, Alex took that first step toward empowerment, leaving behind the remnants of silence and stepping boldly into the light. The dimly lit room hummed with tension as Alex stood at the front, heart pounding in their chest, a cacophony of doubt swirling within. Shadows danced across the walls, mimicking the restless thoughts that plagued their mind. This was it, the moment to break the silence that had smothered them for so long. But the weight of fear pressed heavily on their shoulders, threatening to drag them back into the shadows of isolation. The audience's eyes were fixed on Alex, a mix of curiosity and skepticism flickering in their expressions. Alex's hands trembled slightly as they gripped the edges of the podium, the cool wood grounding them momentarily. They had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times, each word polished, each intonation practiced. But now, standing on the precipice of vulnerability, the script felt inadequate against the rawness of their experience. Taking a deep breath, Alex began, voice trembling but resolute. I stand before you today, not just as a survivor, but as someone who has felt the suffocating grip of anxiety and fear. The terror of being stalked isn't merely physical. It invades the very essence of who we are. Every glance over the shoulder, every rustle in the bushes. It's a constant reminder that our privacy, our identity, feels like it's slipping away. With each word, the internal storm began to quiet. The audience remained silent, absorbing the weight of the unspoken terror that often went unnoticed. Alex sensed the palpable shift, the collective breath being held, a shared understanding beginning to blossom. I've learned that silence only empowers our stalkers, feeding their need for control. Speaking out can be our first step toward reclaiming agency. It's time to confront the invisible and dismantle the power it holds. The open doors behind Alex loomed large, a stark reminder of the choices that lay ahead. They had once feared the exposure that came with sharing their story, worried it would deepen their vulnerability. But now they understood. Each word spoken was a brick removed from the wall of isolation that had encased them. They could feel a growing strength bubbling within, a flicker of courage igniting in the depths of their being. Together, we can create a dialogue that acknowledges the emotional violence of stalking, a conversation that offers solace and support to those suffering in silence. Alex continued, their voice gaining momentum. We must break the stigma surrounding this issue and foster a community that embraces survivors rather than shuns them. It is through connection that we can truly heal. A ripple of murmurs coursed through the crowd, a testament to the resonance of Alex's words. The fear that had once threatened to consume them was now transforming into a powerful catalyst for change. Each testimony shared, each story unveiled, added to the collective strength of those present. Alex could feel the walls of fear crumbling, replaced by a palpable sense of solidarity. As they concluded, a lingering question hung in the air, unspoken yet heavy. How could this public act of courage serve not only as a personal reclamation, but also as a beacon of hope for others? With newfound determination, Alex stepped away from the podium, a sense of purpose radiating from them. The open doors now symbolized not only their choice to speak out, but also the myriad connections waiting to be forged beyond their fear. They had initiated a necessary conversation, and in that moment, they were no longer just a victim, but a catalyst for change, ready to stand defiantly against the shadows that had once loomed so large. Dr. Evelyn Hayes sat in her dimly lit office, the soft hum of the fluorescent lights punctuating the silence. The walls were lined with books, volumes on psychology, trauma, and healing, each a testament to the battles fought within the human mind. Today, however, her thoughts were solely focused on Alex Morgan, a survivor emerging from the oppressive shadows of their stalker. The journey had been anything but linear. Just weeks ago, Alex had walked into her office, eyes darting, voice trembling, a ghost of their former self. Paralyzed by fear, they had been a mere shell, trapped in a cycle of anxiety that seemed unbreakable. Now, as she reflected on their transformation, a sense of cautious optimism stirred within her. Empowerment doesn't come from denying the fear, Dr. Hayes mused, her voice gentle yet firm. It emerges when we confront it, piece by piece. She recalled the look on Alex's face when they first realized that silence was not their safety net, but a prison. The moment when understanding dawned, when Alex began to see that their experience was not solely theirs to bear, but a story worthy of being shared. The room felt smaller as she imagined Alex's journey, each session peeling back the layers of trauma to reveal a spark of resilience. You have to take action to open doors that fear has closed, she had told Alex, pointing out that vulnerability could coexist with strength. Those words had hung in the air like a challenge, and Alex had taken them to heart. Dr. Hayes leaned back in her chair, the weight of her observations settling over her. The significance of community and the support network around Alex was profound. Friends, family, even strangers had become allies in the fight against an unseen tormentor. She remembered the moment Alex tentatively shared their narrative at a local support group, their voice trembling but resolute. The warmth of acceptance from the group had enveloped them. Each nod and understanding glance, a reminder that they were not alone. Yet, she couldn't shake the quiet concern that lingered. How far had Alex truly come? Did they understand the depth of their own transformation? How much strength can come from simply being seen? She pondered, her heart heavy with the weight of the question, lingering like smoke in the air. The symbol of open doors flitted through her mind. She had noticed how Alex's posture shifted, how they began to stand taller with each courageous step forward. Those doors, once tightly shut, were now ajar, inviting the light of hope to seep in. Dr. Hayes envisioned Alex standing before a threshold, poised to step into a world that still felt intimidating yet filled with possibilities. But even as hope blossomed, the specter of doubt crept in. Was this a moment of genuine empowerment or a fragile facade? The tension in the room mirrored her internal struggle. She had seen too many survivors falter, their progress stymied by the relentless grip of fear. Could Alex remain steadfast? As the reflections swirled in her mind, Dr. Hayes felt a surge of emotion, an earnest desire for Alex to embrace their newfound strength. Each revelation had been a stepping stone, and she wished for them to fully recognize how far they had come. The path of reclaiming one's identity is fraught with challenge, she whispered into the silence, aware that the journey ahead would not be without its hurdles. Yet, a flicker of hope ignited in her chest. It was the realization that understanding one's transformation, the recognition of fear as a catalyst for strength, was potent. The open doors stood as a metaphor for all that lay ahead, beckoning Alex to step boldly into the life they deserved. Dr. Hayes exhaled slowly, letting the weight of her thoughts settle. The air felt charged with potential, as if the very act of reflection could forge new pathways. And in that moment, one question remained suspended, a quiet reminder of the delicate dance between fear and empowerment. How could Alex's understanding of their psychological transformation fortify their inner strength and hope for reclaiming their identity?